Additions or deletions? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve as presented.
I'll move that we approve the agenda as presented.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Thank you. Item number 3, declaration of any conflict of interest. Does any councillor have any conflict in the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on. Item number 4 is the approval of the minutes of May 14th, May 16th, May 23rd, May 23rd, June 13th, June 13th, and June 13th. I guess we've been busy on those days. What is the wishes of council?
You're looking,
Go ahead.
you're looking at me, so I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes for said dates that the chairperson has said.
Okay, that would be May 14th, special council meeting, May 16th, pre-budget working session, May 23rd, regular council meeting, May 23rd, in-camera meeting, minutes, June 13th, committee of the whole, June 13th, the in-camera, and June 13th, public transcript. Is that your motion, I take it, councillor?
That would be my motion.
We've had a mover. Do we have a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Durkee. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Thank you, councillors. We're all bright and cheery tonight. Hot diggity, I'm going to have a good night. Warden's remarks. In my remarks this evening, there'll be a few things that I'll probably forget and so on. I try to cover all avenues and all events that are happening or have happened in the month of June in both the municipality and surrounding areas and so on. But we're all well aware that on May 31st to June 3rd, we were at the FCM where in Halifax at the new convention center. There were over 2,000 delegates from across Canada. It was a great time for a lot of discussion, and I'm going to be honest with you, I was very proud of you as councillors. I noticed a lot of you were talking with a lot of other individual councillors throughout the days that you were there. I seen you on the exhibitors floor talking with different exhibitors on different items and so on that they were promoting and so on. Also during the sessions, you were all very in tune with the sessions that you were at. And I want to say thank you very much on behalf of myself and the residents. I felt you done an excellent job. There was a lot of people that we talked to. I spoke to quite a few, and I was telling the mayor today what really impressed me more than anything else was as I was walking down to the convention center, there was an elderly, I shouldn't say an elderly couple, another couple walking up the street. So I hauled out the card in a pen and presented it to them, and they looked at it. Yarmouth, we were just down there. We came a week early and we're traveling around Nova Scotia. They were from Alberta. And just want to tell you, you have a beautiful wool shop in Yarmouth. Oh yes. Well, we went in and we were looking at some items, and they're not cheap, they said. No, I said the wool shop is of a very high quality, very high quality. And when we left, we told the people that we'll probably be back. And they left. They stayed overnight in Yarmouth. The next day, they went back to the wool shop and purchased the item they'd been looking at. And when they went in, they told the proprietor, you know, we're back. We're going to get that. And the proprietor happened to tell him and said, you know, when you left here, we didn't think you'd be back, that you were just saying that. So they gave him a discount on the item they wanted. They were so impressed, these people. But in the people that I spoke with, and I imagine it happened to you, 90% of the people were impressed with Nova Scotia. They enjoyed the countryside. They enjoyed their travels. There was quite a few that were going to stay another week or two, which really impressed me. There was a group from Alberta that were going to stay and do a tour down in Lunenburg. The organization down there was going to give them a personal tour They're going to pick them up at the hotel, the Marriott Harbourfront, and give them a full tour of down through Chester, Mahone Bay, etc., and so on. So I think we're very fortunate. We have a beautiful province, and we have people that reach out and help and assist other people. This past June, I was re-elected as chair of WasteCheck at our annual AGM, which represents from Digby County and Yarmouth County. So I'm very pleased to announce that I will be representing our area again, both on regional chairs and on the Divert Board. June 15th, I happened to attend the Lions Club Charter Night at the Grand Hotel. There was around 70 people, basically all members of the Lions Club. The new head lion, as they call him, they don't call him a warden or a chairman, they call him a head lion, so you have to respect that word lion, is Dave Ernst. I think we all know who Dave is. He is the town engineer, and he'll be retiring soon, so he can devote a lot of his time to being that person. I had the opportunity to speak, and I said a few words, and the Lions Club do a lot of greatness within all of Yarmouth County. They support a lot of different initiatives. They support a lot of other organizations in our county and so on, and really opened my eyes when they listed off. They had to list off about 25 or 30 different projects that they do in Yarmouth County, which was really impressive. So on June 16th, I was fortunate to be requested to make say a few words at the Scouts for the local Yarmouth Scout group at the Mariner Center. I was impressed when I walked in. It was quite a setup and so on, and I commended the co-chairs, Jamie Frotton, Jeff Little, and Steve Brannon. They're all co-leaders of the Scouts here in Yarmouth, and they said the reason the facility is set up as nice as this is because Murray Motors had their 10-year anniversary the night before, and Murray Motors had offered to leave up the tables, the dance floor, everything set up. So it was quite an impression for the young Scouts to walk in and have something like that for them. I was really impressed when I on stage and looking down, and behold, who do I see sitting in the audience but Councillor Trevor Cunningham and his wife Leslie, and your son has been just a year in Scouts, and it is a good organization. As a young person, I was in Cubs, so I know exactly what's going through, and it's a good organization. A lot of discipline, a lot of respect is taught there, and so on. So Trevor, thank you for having your son and being there. It was really enjoyable afternoon and so on, and the kids deserved everything that they received. And what impressed me the most, as Jeff Little, as I stated, was a co-chair, but his son was the MC, Alex. And I was impressed with that young fella. He spoke very well and presented very well, and they run a real tight little ship there for their due. June 18th, the CAO, Victoria, and myself were in Halifax at a physician recruitment session, and it was organized by NSFM, the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities. There was around 100 people or delegates that were there. And what I found out there, did I go there thinking that the health authority was going to say, hey, we got 100 new physicians coming in 2018? No, I didn't. But what I did find out is that every one of the municipalities, every one of the regions, every one of the zones have the same issues that we have. Even Halifax. You know, yeah, you would think with the large population they have lots of doctors. Yes, there is lots of doctors, but there is people in Halifax that don't have a doctor. So we're all facing the same issue, and the Nova Scotia Health Authority is working at trying to find a solution. And are they going to find a solution overnight? No, they're not, but they're working at it. They're going to recruitments and so on. But as they stated, at these recruitments, they're not the only ones there. And the graduating doctors, and even before they graduated, they are courted to kind of sign up to different areas. So they find it difficult and hard. So what they were asking, and Liverpool has stepped up, and I was quite impressed. I haven't had the opportunity to speak to the CAO pertaining to what Liverpool has done, which I thought was quite impressive of their region, all the things. And believe it or not, they use, I think, I'm quite sure in saying this, Victoria, they had a drone that had done a video of like some of the Mersey River, et cetera, over the hospital, and it was quite an impressive video that they have, that they show to try and recruit, and they've been successful at using that. So that's one of the things that the health authority was asking each zone is to, what can we as an area commit to or show that we have in Yarmouth County to impress people that they can take to these recruitments and so on. What are some of our assets that we have here and so on? Not just the hospital or YMCA, et cetera, our sports fields and so on, but what are some of the assets, the recreational part of it, our lakes out through Carlton and so on, just, you know, the fishing areas, et cetera, show all those. So that's just something that we can be talking about in the near future. On June 19th, along with myself, the CAO, and Councillor Durkee and Councillor Cunningham, Trevor Cunningham, we attended the Wren's AGM in Clare. They had 3 outgoing board members, Dave Saxon, Angela Thurber, and Dr. Michelle Comeau were stepping down. They had done their full term. A board member is allowed to do 2 terms, and they had fulfilled both the terms and so on. They appointed 2 new board members, Mary Thompson from the Nova Scotia Community College, and I'm going to get it right here, Nick Dion, and Nick works in Digby, and he's a chartered accountant. And as I said, Dave Saxon was stepping down, so Nick kind of filled right back in, so their board will be full. They are looking for one more person to fill the 3 that are stepping off and so on, and that'll be brought forward at one of their next meetings. On June 21st, I was in Truro for a general meeting and the AGM of Divert Nova Scotia. At that meeting, we were given the names of the 7 winners of Divert Scholarship Awards, and on the 28th, or tomorrow I should say, the 20th, I will be presenting on behalf of Divert a scholarship for $2,500 to a local Yarmouth resident student here at the Yarmouth High School, which if you go last year, it was a student in Digby that won for Region 7, so I'm very pleased with doing that. It is graduation week, I guess I'll say right across Nova Scotia for a lot of young students and so on, and all of those graduating are going to be stepping up to the college forum. And if they thought elementary school was hard and high school was hard, wait until you get into college and university. Yeah, they'll learn all about life now. Anyway, this upcoming weekend is July 1st here on the Yarmouth waterfront. I know in a lot of other local communities across the province, they'll be celebrating Canada Day down in Pubnico and so on. We all do it and so on, and I hope that as many people as possible can get out to the July 1st here in the town of Yarmouth. They will be doing fireworks, my understanding, and hopefully it's a fine day, which I believe the weather forecast is for fine weather. The Doppler radar has told us that. No rain. No rain. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I apologize. Other than that, that's basically been what's been happening. Other than, and I'm not sure, and I'm going to sidestep here and ask Councillor Durkee if is there something going on at the Lighthouse on July 1st? Go ahead.
As a matter of fact, there is.
Okay, please.
On July 1st, we have our annual Canada Day concert. We have a great lineup of music starting at 6 o'clock until 9 p.m. We have the Keeper's Kitchen will be serving up the barbecue for people for purchase, and we have a cake donated by Sobeys that will be serving that day as well. We'd like to thank the federal government for support of with the Celebrate Canada grant.
Okay, thank you. I thought there was something, I wasn't sure, and I apologize, I didn't have it in my report, so. Thank you. Other than that, that is my report. Item number 6, business arising. 6.1 is recommendations from the June 13th Committee of the Whole meeting. 6.1.1, loss of tax exemption. You have that in your package. Let me find it here. Please. It's in here. Let me go down far enough. Oh, it's in here. Recommendations from Committee of the Whole, June 13th, 2018, loss of tax exemption. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to recommend that Council forward a letter to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities requesting their continued support and advocating for municipality support regarding the possible elimination of 1/3 income tax exemption for elected officials, with a carbon copy of this letter being forwarded to Nova Scotia MPs.
We have a mover. Do we have a seconder?
Second that.
Been moved by Councillor Durkee, seconded by Deputy Warden. Before we go to the vote, I'd like to add something. We had in here to copy to the Nova Scotia MPs. At this time, I would ask, could we add to that, to the NSFM, because I believe there is in their report, they are sending a letter also to the federal government.
I'm in favor of
Okay.
amending that motion. Thank you.
Okay.
And I'll agree
Okay. So,
to amend it as a second.
okay. So you all heard the amended motion? Are you ready for the question?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I have one question in that regard, even though I seconded this. It says CC letters being forwarded to Nova Scotia MPs. Is that all 11 of them, or just the local 2, Bernadette, or all across
All.
Nova Scotia?
Yeah.
All.
Okay, absolutely.
Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Thank you. 6.1.2, letter from the municipality of Digby, letters of support for completion of Highway 101, Digby to Weymouth. What is your wishes? Oh, I'm sorry again. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to forward a letter to Premier McNeil with copies to MP Colin Fraser, Honorable Lloyd Hines, Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal, and MLA Gordon Wilson, requesting that the federal and provincial governments approve funding for Phase 2 of the completion of Highway 101 from Digby to Weymouth.
We have a mover. Do we have a seconded by Councillor Allen? Was there any further discussion on the motion? Ready for the question? Question being called. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Thank you. 6.1.3, District Planning Commission, dissolution and interim plan. You have that in your package. What is your wishes? Go ahead, Deputy Warden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion from the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole to 1, dissolve the District Planning Commission, and 2, pursue securing contracted planning services in the future.
Been moved by the Deputy Warden. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Durkee. Was there any further discussion on that? If I may, I don't want to put Councillor Cushion on the spot, so I don't know, where has the District Planning Commission had any meetings lately or anything of that nature to discuss this?
No, we haven't. There's been no meeting. The last meeting we did have
Can you turn your mic on? Go ahead.
Is that better? Yeah, the last meeting we had, we were gonna let the CAOs will be discussing between themselves, between the municipality of Argyle and the municipality of Yarmouth on what direction to go from there, and that's where it's been left, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Pardon me? Yes, go ahead.
Just for the benefit of the people in the gallery this evening, what precipitated the dissolution of the District Planning Commission is the impending retirement of the individual who currently provides planning services jointly to Argyle and the District of Yarmouth. So we've just taken that as an opportunity to look at efficient and effective service delivery.
Okay. Ready for the question? Question being called. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Thank you. 6.1.4, 2018 National Special Olympics Summer Games. You had that in your package. What is the wishes of the council? Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As you can see in here that the request was to, on information on possible donations to the organization or the athletes to report back in regards to supporting the National Special Olympics Summer Games. And down here I see that there's a reply. The Yarmouth Recreation was contacting and has not received a request of funding for the Special Olympics.
Okay.
In previous years, when we received requests like that, those requests were referred to Yarmouth Recreation in regards where it was part of a sport or anything like that. And I believe that's what we should do here, is we should refer that request from our council to our Recreation Department, because in their budget, they do have funds set aside for things like this, donations and or donations. What was the other word I was looking for? I can't think of it right now. Donations or helping out the athletes getting to and from the event. So I think that's what be prudent for council to do at this time, because we have done that in previous years.
Okay. Is that what you council wish to do? Go ahead, Councillor.
I have a little different take on the matter, and the reason being is that the Special Olympics is being hosted here in Nova Scotia. The letters come to us. It didn't come jointly to us in Yarmouth. Right. Yarmouth is a participant jointly with the town, jointly. So sending it off there because it's a request, we'd have to work with the town on that. We don't know if that would be approved or not. Given that the letter has come to us, and given that we'll have athletes participating from the municipality, District of Yarmouth, and the town, it's a national event. There's a lot of volunteers involved, and for those reasons, I'd move that we donate $250 in support of the volunteers and our athletes at the games.
Okay. Okay, there's a motion on the floor. You just want to, are you?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor.
If I'm understanding Councillor Trevor Cunningham on this, are you suggesting that the $250 go to an athlete in the municipality to get to participate? No, that's not the request. Okay. All right. I like to see, if I may, I like to see us support the athlete or athletes who are going from Yarmouth. Also, I like to see them be supported.
I think.
That's what I like to see done. Two of them. So
No.
because it is a costly venture for them. They have to do fundraising and whatnot to get themselves there. So I like to see us support the Yarmouth athletes also, if possible.
Okay, if I may, before I go to Councillor Allen, the original request letter that came was, they sent it out as I'll say just a form letter to all municipal units in the province, looking for municipal units to support the volunteer organization in Antigonish.
That's
In
right.
Antigonish, and I believe at our council, when we discussed it, we thought if we were going to do anything, we would want to help support travel expenses, etc., for the athletes that were going from Yarmouth County.
That's right.
And then we suggested it goes off to Recreation to see if they had already been requested a grant or anything. And it come back that they hadn't. Councillor Cunningham is suggesting 250, and that would be used, if I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but that would be used to help send, or I'll say travel expense, lodging or whatever, would it
No.
be? Or, no, go ahead. It's gonna go to Councillor Allen first, Trevor, I'm sorry.
Okay,
ahead.
just to clarify this, from my understanding, we received a letter from the organizing committee,
Yes.
the president of the organizing committee for the National Special Olympic Summer Games, which are being held in Antigonish.
Yes.
I think it's a tremendous event. I think it's great, but I think that when they bid for this event, and I'm pretty sure they would have had to have, they should have had their budget covered. I don't believe we've ever held an event in our municipality where we've asked Antigonish to come forward with funds to help us put our event on. I just personally, and in saying that, again, I think it's a great event. I just think that if we are going to put the municipality's money somewhere, it should be directly to athletes from our area. I think if they put the bid in to host this event with a budget and they knew what their budget was, then that should be their responsibility.
Yes, you're right on.
So, but again, I just want to reiterate, I think it's a great event, but I think if we are putting money somewhere, I don't think it would be too hard to find out who is going, and I realize that wasn't the letter that we've got, but as far as the letter, I'm not in favor of sending money to Antigonish for an event that they put a bid in to host and are now scrambling
Good point.
to,
It's a good point.
you know.
It's a good point. Go ahead, Trevor, you wanna? Go ahead.
Yeah, and in the letter, and you know, I respect everybody's opinion on this. There's many different ways legitimately looking at this, certainly. So, and the $250 I thought was kind of in my mind, is kind of almost a token amount. We're not talking about sending, you know, a large money, but just kind of I guess it's a token amount essentially to show our support of our athletes, and it kind of alludes to that in the wording of the letter. So it says in the letter, and I'll read it verbatim, we're almost there. The budget's about $2.2 million. So small and large businesses alike throughout Antigonish Town and County have been asked over the last couple of weeks to support this great event, which will feature many athletes with intellectual disabilities. Their support has been great, and still many to hear from. Here's where you and your council can help as well by showing support to the athletes from Nova Scotia and maybe your municipality. And in fact, there are some from our municipality attending the event. So it's not like there's an event that's going on in Nova Scotia that doesn't have any connect to the municipality district of Yarmouth. There is a small connect, and I thought it would just show our support of those athletes that we'd appear on the in the residents would appear as being supportive of the athletes. And I hear the direct support is obviously a different matter, and is a more direct way probably of supporting, but we don't this is a separate issue. If somebody were to come to us for a grant, then we could consider that, but at this point we don't have that. So I thought it would be a good gesture, but again, there may be differing opinions, and certainly I respect any of those. I don't think there's any right and wrong here. Certainly I just think there's something to be decided by council. I'll say that.
Okay, was there any further discussion on it? You understood, Trevor is saying we send it to the organizing committee and so on. You understand that's what the motion is and so on? And you're fine with that? You're okay? Any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Contrary minded? Nay. That's for nay. Yeah. 3. Motion carried. Thank you. Oh, I guess I'll have to ask the question. This $250, this comes out of the contingency fund? The grants, I'm sorry. Thank you. (6.1.5) Letter of thanks to Sergeant Perry, RCMP headquarters tour while we were at FCM. What is the wishes? Go. I think I got.
I guess
Deputy Warden. I'm sorry, Trevor.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to forward a letter of thanks to Staff Sergeant Ben Perry for organizing the H Division RCMP headquarters tour in Dartmouth.
We have a mover. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Allen. Was there any further discussion on that motion? Ready for the question? Question being called. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. Thank you. 6.1.6 FCM Special Advocacy Fund. You have that in your package also. What is your wishes? Who has that? Go ahead, Councillor.
Right. The background on this is the Federation of Canadian Municipalities does work to advocate for municipalities across Canada for the betterment, like essentially lots of projects, but much of which centers around infrastructure and policy. And it works a lot with the federal and provincial governments, mainly the federal government, to advocate on our behalf. And essentially, given that there are going to be lots of decisions being made about funding over the next couple of years, because there's a federal election on the horizon, they're requesting some additional funding to advocate for municipalities, for infrastructure, for all those things that we need and want for residents. And given that fact, I'll move that the Municipality District of Yarmouth support the FCM Special Advocacy Fund voluntary contribution with a 2-year contribution of a total of $920.
Second.
Been moved by Councillor Trevor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee. Was there any further discussion on that motion? None. You ready for the question? Question being called. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. 6.1.7 Ferry Terminal Redevelopment Project. You have that in your package. Councillor Durkee, go ahead.
Sure. It is fortunate at this time that the both provincial and federal governments are coming forward with some funds to improve our ferry terminal, which is great considering that our tourism industry is improving. So I'd like to make a motion to recommend that council proceed with the submission to support a funding application for the Phase 1 Ferry Terminal Redevelopment Project with the municipality of the District of Yarmouth's contribution to the project not to exceed 1.2 million or 40%, whichever is less, of the municipal unit's 1/3 share as contemplated under the federal, provincial, municipal 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 funding formula, contingent upon receiving funding from all 3 levels of government and further contingent upon an agreement on the governance being determined prior to signing any contracts.
You've heard the motion. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Allen. Was there any further discussion on that motion? Oh, it'd be, I don't know, Trevor Cunningham, you're first. Go ahead.
Right, so I have a couple comments to make on the motion. I'll begin by stating that I am in support of the motion. However, having said that, there are some issues that I do have with the way in which we're moving forward. So I agree with Councillor Durkee to an extent, and that it is a favorable thing that the federal government and provincial government are supporting. However, it is a Nova Scotia ferry, and it's good the province is there, it's good the feds are there, but again, the 3 units in this end of the province, Yarmouth units, are being asked to fund 1/3 of it. So we've always said it's a Nova Scotia ferry. Other folks are saying it's a Nova Scotia ferry, which is true. And it's really important for Yarmouth. So for those reasons, I'm in support of the motion. But having said that, I'd hope for a bigger contribution, and more, not in absolute dollars, but in percentage from the feds, because it is an international ferry service, and they at one point supported it, 100%. So they're down to 30. So anyway, that for me, that's a little disappointing. But having said that, on balance, I mean, we've got to move forward. It's an important piece of infrastructure, important for the area, for jobs. So that's my one concern, certainly, and it's a fairly substantial concern. I guess having said that's one concern. The other concern is that the water's not deep there. We're doing this to allow for improved, essentially, customs and security. That's going to be a requirement, certainly moving forward, to have the terminal. But having said that, there's not deep enough water to bring in the larger cruise ships, and I think maybe that's something we should look at over the long term. That we're able to secure a deeper water port to maybe develop our attractiveness for cruise activity, because that seems to be a big part of the business as well. The ferry is, of course, separate business, but it'd be nice to be able to attract that to the Yarmouth area. We've got Bar Harbor that serves ships, Portland, St. John, and so forth. So those would be my comments.
Deputy Warden?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm kind of put back a little bit by the amount of money is either the 1.2 or 40%, whichever is less. But one thing that I do agree with that we're putting in here, and it's very important, that the agreement governance is to be determined prior to signing any contracts. And to me, that's very important, because that's a large chunk of money going in a piece of infrastructure that, as of right now, that we have really no say, even though it's located in the town. But if we're going to be putting money in there, I certainly want a voice at the table in regards to how that is ultimately built and run after the fact. So that's one thing that I'm very glad to see that's in this motion. And thank you, Councillor Durkee, for putting that in there.
Councillor Cushion?
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Trevor Cunningham about the way that the feds used to support our ferry services, and now they reduced it down to 1/3, just for a little bit for some improvement. But on the positive side, I would say it's a step in the right direction. We're making a step in the right direction. Secondly, Trevor mentioned about perhaps trying to have a deeper water port in Yarmouth. Just to let council know that the Waterfront Development Committee, which I sat on, have mentioned before that they like to see this, and down in the Bunkers Island area where the water is deeper. The shallow water starts from once you come around Bug Light, that's where she gets shallow, but there's deeper water there. So it definitely is a major undertaking to do something like that, but it is part of the waterfront development, which would be in our area, in which I like to see Bunkers Island included, and we do have a walking trail down that way. So I like to let council know that's it's on our radar, but it's it's definitely far away right now, but depending on funding, but it definitely would be a benefit to our community for sure. Another point, Deputy Warden Cunningham mentioned about we're putting this large chunk of money in there, and whereas the terminal is in Yarmouth, in the town of Yarmouth, and I agree 100% that we should have some type of say and know the finances and how things work there, and I think we all were pretty astonished when we did have the meeting and found out that where some money was, right? So I think that's very important, that having our governance about that we do have some say because of the amount of money we're putting into it. So, thank you.
Councillor Durkee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to comment that we're moving forward with improving this with the terminal, hopefully, if everybody agrees. And with the way things are working with the U.S. government in the past and having to put money into our terminals on the U.S. side, I think it's really important that we put the money into our terminals, particularly because we're heading towards pre-clearance for customs. And I think that's going to set the standard for getting more people coming and going, and maybe hoping in the future at some point that we can get transport trucks going from here as well. I think that would be, if we have that, that will be of great benefit to us. So I'm quite happy that, you know, we've been approached by the provincial government to say we have money for you and let's go, and here's our opportunity, let's grab it. Oh, and also this is also phase one, so yes, maybe in the future that the federal government will actually look at this project and say, okay, this is phase one, this is what we can do for you for phase two to make it even better.
Thank you. Councillor LeBlanc?
Thank you. I enjoyed what Councillor Trevor Cunningham said about looking in the future. I was told, going back a little bit here, we have a gentleman in the audience here that used to be the tourist manager. I don't know when it was, 30 years ago or 20 years ago or 92. But I was told that the municipality, maybe Leland, Mr. Chair, would know this, that the municipality had a chance to buy Bunkers Island at that point, at one time, and this was discussed to have a terminal there. Do you remember that? Or maybe, no? Okay. I heard that and they declined at that time. So maybe we, you know, in the future, maybe we can push that a little harder, because it seems to me like the terminal that we have now is just a waste of money, you know, because it's going to go down. It's just fixing it up, and then in 5 years they're going to build another one somewhere else.
Was there any further discussion on that? If not, you ready for the question? Question being called. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. Thank you. I'd just like to make a quick comment, you know, pertaining to that. I believe this is a step in the right direction for Yarmouth County to start towards as a joint effort and so on, because the ferry is a Nova Scotia ferry. It's not a Yarmouth ferry. Just because it lands here, it brings tourism to all of Nova Scotia. But we have seen the benefit both in hotel occupancy and in some sales from restaurants and so on in the last couple of years and so on. And like anything, starting a new business or restarting a business, sometimes what you've lost takes a little while to rebuild. And it's going to take a while to rebuild. The Americans are going through a rebuilding episode or whatever in their country. And I don't know, eh? Maybe we can take some aluminum across on the ferry. I don't know, eh? Anyway, saying that, I think it's the first step in the right direction and so on. Thank you very much. 6.2 Doppler radar. To my fellow councillors and so on, and I mentioned it at our last council meeting, the go forward, we had this session at the Grand Hotel. We had a lot of input and so on. The interest is there, and I believe both Councillor Cushion and Councillor Allen at the time kind of, I won't say volunteered their time, but were willing to kind of step up along with myself to look at setting up meetings and so on a go forward with this. So I guess right now I'm just going to leave the floor open for some discussion on how you might like to, because I have ideas on how going forward, but I'll open the mic up to Councillor LeBlanc first, and
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if you watch CTV, but they have a new weather person on CTV,
okay.
and at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or whatever, and he has the Doppler radars. It shows where they are in
Yes.
the circle that they go around.
Yes.
The one in Halifax, and there's one
In Frederick.
in Fredericton, and where's the other one? Somewhere's around Amherst or Truro or somewhere.
No.
Cape Breton.
Breton.
Well, the one in Halifax goes right over where the one in Fredericton and Sydney. It just goes right over them. It doesn't cover anymore,
Yeah.
and then it doesn't cover enough for the southern part. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Cushion.
Yes, the Doppler radar. As you recall at the meeting at the Grand Hotel, they were talking about the Doppler radar only picks up the moisture in the air and whatnot, what's coming in that. And they were talking about it closer to the Yarmouth area for because of the curvature of the earth and whatnot, so to give a little bit better reading. But however, we certainly know now, and it was brought up back when I first became a councillor, that back in 2014 we were talking about this Doppler radar and nothing was ever followed up with, so which we did. And then at that time, that's when we found out the Doppler radar was only good for the moisture part and not so much for the winds. So in saying that, we discussed with the presenters, myself and Councillor Allen also, and so we've kind of taken it on our position to, and we talked about getting together and some of the stakeholders involved in the fishing industry to come up with some recommendations on what we like to see happen. At that time, we decided to wait till after the lobster season had finished, and I've been talking to Councillor Allen during that time, and I also mentioned that in July I'd like to get together with Councillor Allen, and we can do some brainstorming and
Yes.
on different organizations and stakeholders that we could ask to exactly what they want. And I think I'm pretty comfortable saying that we could probably have something in September of some information to pass on. Like we did find out that
He had to go.
also that the weather reports that the U.S., which the fishermen use now, are the same. The Canadian government, or the Canadian forecasters, they receive the same information from the satellites, the U.S. satellites, but they present it a little differently, and that's where the problem lies. So we're going to be pushing for to try to get some clarification there to have a better reporting system. Number one, and I've talked this over with Councillor Allen before, and we also discussed it at that meeting at the Grand Hotel, that the perfect situation would be weather buoys,
Yes.
and which give you on-time weather reports. And they certainly expressed their concern that they're very costly to put in the water. But to develop a new Doppler radar site, which doesn't give us the wind part of it, I think it was over $1 million or something like, I believe it was, quite expensive. But for $1 million, at that time, I think it was between $250,000 and $500,000 per weather buoy to be stationed in strategic areas in the Gulf of Maine to give us the accurate weather. So I think what our strategy has been, and Daniel and I have discussed it, that, you know, if we get our stakeholders together and see exactly what they want, but I like to see us aim high, and as long as we get an improvement, that'd be great. But if we don't ask for everything, we probably we'll even get less. So that would be so that's our our strategy right now and our timeline would be, like say, during July. The reason why I picked July, because I'm in a quite a large project myself that I have to have done by July 1st. So once that is done, I'll be freed up to, and Councillor Allen and I will get together and Warden, if you like to do, and start the ball rolling. And I feel very confident that by September we should have some good information to pass on to council and to get environment involved again. So that's where I'm standing anyway. So thank you.
Councillor Allen?
Yeah, just to reiterate what Councillor Cushing is saying is, and we've talked about it a little bit, we'd like to get the stakeholders together with probably a couple of the members from Environment Canada that were at that meeting. They seemed very interested in hearing what we had to say. They have some restraints on how they can actually put the weather out there, and they're federal restraints, so they may need a little bit of backing to go after. So I think if we could get together with a few of the big, the big fishing organizations in the area, really, not just our municipality, like anywhere from Digby to Shelburne, and sit down with Environment Canada, maybe go over what options they can present us, and we can show them what we use. But as far as the Doppler radar, they've explained it pretty well, that it wouldn't help as far as our fishing community or anything to do with winds. It's mostly a moisture reading. So they're planning on moving it down a little bit. I think that'll cover us a little bit better, maybe for hurricane seasons and stuff like that, snowstorms. But as far as, we had a really great conversation with them on marine predicting weather, because most of the fishermen in this area use other modes of predicting, so but no, I think we should sit down, maybe get a hold of the people from Environment Canada and sit back down with them again with some stakeholders and see what we can come up with.
Okay. Councillor Cushing, you wish to?
Yes, I'm glad Councillor Allen brought up that there. There's one thing I forget to mention. Our MP, Colin Fraser, we talked several times about these issues, and our MP, Colin Fraser, asked me if we could keep him abreast of how we're doing, and he would do what he could on his part to try to improve our system. So we've been reaching out on political side, so, and we'll continue on. So we'll have a good report for you. Thank you.
Would it be possible then, when our meeting is over this evening, that the three of us, along with if the CEO has some time this evening, kind of set up a preliminary date, I'll say for the four of us to sit down and, okay, when do you want to meet? Because I believe we should meet with the stakeholders first, so that we're all on a kind of a page and do some research, then maybe have a second meeting, then meet with the environment again to, this is what we'd like to see or we'd like to move forward with. And I believe going up, getting some stakeholders from Digby and down as far as either Shelburne, Barrington, and so on, I'm quite sure the lobster capital of the world, Eddie, would be more than willing to be, because there was support. Even at FCM, I had some of those councillors approach me. They thought it was a good way for us to move forward, especially for Southwest Nova and Encompass. So if it's only a weather buoy, if that helps, and we can have one or get two or whatever we can come up with to help our that industry, it's a benefit to the whole area and so on. So, thank you. On that note. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Go ahead, Deputy Warden.
Yes, I do remember an email coming through from someone who had something to do with buoys. Has that person been contacted since?
No.
Do you remember that? And
Yes. There's a company down the South Shore. Yes, there's somebody down there. No, because we hadn't met or anything to discuss new electronic type of.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
and maybe
they're
that
doing
would
it for
be
the
something
oil
that
industry.
we could also include in that, where
Well, it's an avenue, but maybe Councillor Cushing has some.
Yeah, I think that was more of the European connection there because a lot of times now you'll see, I'm trying to think of the U.S., what's the word I'm looking for? Tracking of the storm, and then they go by the European tracking of the storm, and sometimes they're a little bit different. But I think this, the European one, or the buoy that Deputy Warden was talking about, that was more for I think it was developed more for the oil industry, for
Yes.
the offshore oil and stuff like this. But still,
be.
it's something that we could certainly look into. And I do remember that he mentioned that.
We'd
So-
have to go back and.
So definitely we won't leave that out either, for sure.
Okay. Thank you very much for all your input. Item number 7, new business. You have in your package 7.1, which is your May development report. What is the wishes of council? Go ahead, Councillor.
I'll move that we receive the May development report as circulated.
We have been moved by Councillor Trevor Cunningham, seconded by Lauren Cushion. Councillor Cushion, excuse me, apologize. Is there any further discussion on the May development report? Question being called. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Thank you. 7.2, recommendations from the Bylaw and Policy Review Committee. Councillor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to approve the tax arrear payment arrangement policy T8210-17.
We have a mover. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Been moved by Councillor Durkee, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. Was there any further discussion on that motion? Question being called. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Thank you. 7 point, again, Councillor Durkee.
Thank you again. I'd like to make a motion to approve the dangerous or unsightly premises policy D042-18 as discussed in our bylaw meeting, please.
Been moved by Councillor Durkee, seconded by Councillor Cushion. Was there any further discussion on the motion? You ready for the question? Question being called. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. Second here, I'm not a fast writer, but. 7.3, possible partnership with the municipality of Argyle. We're per Forest Glen Internet expansion. Deputy Warden Cunningham. Go ahead, Deputy Warden.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As we all know that Mark Blinn is currently working on possibly moving on some sort of an expansion to get the Forest Glen Internet Tower to cover more areas. One of the proposed or possible areas that it could be used would be a TIR tower in North Kemp. I was talking to one of my colleagues, the Deputy Warden Danny Muse, who represents the area of East Kemp, which is not a part of the municipality of Yarmouth, it's part of the municipality district of Argyle. That they are also an underserved area as well. And I said maybe we could come to some sort of an agreement. We certainly don't have any dollar figures at this time. Engineering and NCS Communications Network is still currently working on the best possible option to possibly expand the Forest Glen Tower range. And I would like to possibly send out a letter to the municipality of Argyle, whereas I know that one of their top priorities is getting internet out to the rural areas as well. And this may be able to kill two birds with one stone. It may be a little bit cheaper for us, and it'd be a lot cheaper for them if they had to come up with their own solution. Therefore, I would like to make a motion that the municipality district of Yarmouth forward a letter to the municipality of Argyle requesting that we possibly partner on expansion of internet services in the Kempt, North and East Kemptville area.
Second that.
Been moved by the Deputy Warden John Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Durkee. Question being called. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. I'd like to take a moment to speak on that. One of the discussions, as I had mentioned earlier about the doctor recruitment and so on, that is a discussion that is, or I should, that's part of a discussion that in rural Nova Scotia, and you don't have to be too far from Halifax to be rural and not have internet. And internet in Atlantic Canada is really poor and so on. And I am very, very disappointed in the federal government with the sum of money that they've put out there, and somewhat disappointed with the province of Nova Scotia with the, was it 120 million they had, but they put that into a trust and so on. Rural Nova Scotia is suffering big time when today's generation, everything is done, as we're well aware, almost the big computer is, or the large laptops as we call them, is almost a thing of the past, when reality is we all have them here this evening. I see Daniel has one sitting on the counter, and I see Gerard has one. I have one strapped to my waist and so on. We walk around with these, and you do a lot of stuff on these. And the younger generation of today, Patty, you have two young daughters, and they probably live. That's what they do, eh? That's how they connect, that's how they communicate and so on. And when the federal government, I realize that Canada is a big nation, but Atlantic Canada was here first. The settlers came here, and I don't know why we're ignored to the extent that we are. I realize they put money in, but man, it's not enough. And our application that we put in, when that was, I won't say denied, but it wasn't recognized, it didn't make the list, and we're out of the loop. And here we are. You want to move forward? Well, in today's society, if you don't have internet, you're not going anywhere, and for industry and so on. But we're doing the best we can. And I appreciate the Deputy Warden's thoughts on having Argyle and so on partner up, and we try. So I think that's an area that we have to really focus on, along with a few other things. But internet is an important, it's almost like air nowadays. You have to have it or you're not going to survive. So thank you for that, moving forward on that, Councillor. 7.4. NSFM, Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities Board Report. It's in there for your information. A lot of information and initiatives that they're working on and so on. Was there any question? Okay, Councillor Cunningham, hit.
Just a comment, and within that document, NSFM discusses cannabis legalization. It's coming, I think, October the 17th. The date. The
1201.
1201. The time that the legislation comes into effect. But having said that, the province of Nova Scotia's tabled, it says here, it's tabled two relevant pieces of legislation, one dealing with the sale of cannabis through the Nova Scotia liquor stores, and one amending the Smoke-Free Places Act to include the smoking of cannabis. The Department of Justice presented an overview of the legislation at the NSFM Spring Workshop, and their presentation is available on the NSFM website. So there's a working group in place, and here's the important part. Municipalities will be able to enact further restrictions for public consumption through bylaws. Concerns remain around public safety, enforcement, and costs. The committee is also considering model bylaws and approaches to health and safety in the workplace. Now, having said that, many of us attended the Federation of Canadian Municipalities annual conference in Halifax, and there was a big session. It was early in the morning. I think it started at 7:30, 7 o'clock we were there. Yeah, so we were on the job at 7, and it was well worthwhile because we got a flavor for what municipalities were going to be doing across the country. And the consensus in the room I heard lots of speakers, the general consensus, and we may move in a different direction, was that municipalities generally weren't looking at enacting a lot of additional restrictions through the bylaw process, but that they may, in fact, lobby provincial or federal governments for changes in the legislation moving forward. Because what ends up happening, and we may through the NSFM bring in model bylaws, that may be all right. But if we go it on our own, alone, as an independent municipality, we'll end up with a patch work of different bylaws all across the province. So that's somewhere we don't want to be. So I guess the expectation probably shouldn't be among us as councillors nor the public that we have any legislation in terms of municipal bylaws ready to go on October 17th. So any municipal bylaw that we'd adopt would likely be, I would think, I'm not saying that's a guarantee, would likely come through the NSFM or through conversations with the province or other jurisdiction, including the feds. So those are my comments. I think that's important to have that conversation here in open council, and just to let people know that we are working on the file, and certainly are looking at some bylaw pieces. I guess the one bylaw piece we may change in policy would be around the human resources side of things with our employees. So that's all active. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cushion?
Yes, and just to further discussion that Trevor just gave us, the information that I received from the FCM, the booklet on the cannabis and the workshop and whatnot, and again at our Federation FNS meeting that we had. Yeah, I get mixed up on them already. So, but anyway, both those at the provincial one, which is held in Yarmouth here, the author of our alcohol and tobacco and cannabis community action plan attended, and I introduced them to the Halifax councillor who is doing the basically same thing that we're doing, and they're sharing information back and forth. So the FCM, I get some other information, and I pass it on to the author again of our community action plan to look at that. And I believe we have a bylaw coming up, meeting coming up, that we're going to just deal with this
Cannabis.
particular, the cannabis one. I forget exactly when it is now, July.
I can't remember. Okay. Okay.
Separate.
July 9th, but there may be a change
July
in that
9th.
date.
So we are moving together, and by that date we should have some pretty good information that we can introduce to our bylaws. But also just so that the public know, again, we're going on the bylaw side of it, and I know the municipality of Argyle are working on the PAC part of it. So in the original presentation, the town of Yarmouth in theory was in favor of what we were doing. All three municipalities were in favor of what we were doing. But at the end of the day, we'll have to see where everybody stands at that. But we had to start somewhere, and we're moving along with it. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. On that note, if I may, HRM is doing quite a project. They've enlisted staff to look in that the smoking of cannabis, the smoking of tobacco, and the vaping will all be prohibited anywhere in Halifax. You can do your vaping and so on in a car and so on, and you know what the rule is there. If you have kids, you can't smoke, etc., etc. And I spoke with one of the councillors here just last week, and council's position on that, because this is the way they'd like to go, is it's better to put the hammer down and then lift the hammer, because we have to change some of our restrictions, than not to have restrictions, then try to implement restrictions. Because as you start moving into the cannabis, well, we didn't realize that it should be not smoked within 50 feet of a church, or 1,000 feet of this, and so on, et cetera, et cetera. So they're going to put they're having staff look into what would be the legal implications, what would the businesses and so on their restrictions might be or their concerns might be. So they're, like, it was in one of the Halifax papers, they're going to try and blanket cannabis, tobacco, and vaping all in one big old stroke of the pen. So, as Councillor Cunningham, Trevor Cunningham was stating, this is a big step for municipalities, and that's one of my concerns. Is the municipality of Yarmouth puts a restriction on cannabis. Somebody comes and they're smoking here, and they go up as far as Digby. Digby has a different restrictions and so on, different distance, etc., etc. Almost a person's not going to know where they can and where they can't. They're not even going to, you know. It's. I'd like to see one policy kind of across the province. And then if a municipal council wants to put some, or a municipality would like to put a little bit of different or a little stronger restrictions, that's fine, but try to keep it the same across the province. So when you get off, when you travel from Yarmouth to Sydney, this is what the regulations are, you know, I mean, but we'll wait and see until 12/01, October 17th. We'll see what happens. I'm interested. Thank you very much for your input. Where am I at here? Yeah. 7.5. You have this in your package. Late grant request, CFest. You have that in your pack. Okay, go ahead.
We didn't go 7.4.1 or 7.4.2.
Oh, the climate change. Well, I was doing the whole thing. If there were some questions or concerns, if you wish, I'm sorry.
Yes,
was there anything on 2? Okay,
yes,
go ahead.
I like that on the 7 point. Oh,
Yep.
geez, what happened? I just lost me. Here we are. I wanted to speak on the 7.4.
Yeah, point 2.
Point
Climate
2,
change.
climate change.
adaptation. Yes.
Reading the summary of the presentation of the NSFM board meeting of June 8th.
June 8th.
I don't know how many of you are aware that the province yesterday made an announcement about climate change announcement by the province yesterday. I went going through the stuff, and I can't pronounce her name properly, but and I apologize for it. But Nancy Aniskin, I call her. She's in the coastal adaptation. She's the Coastal Adaptation Senior Coordinator for the Ecology Action Center, and she said that the coast is dynamic and it has its own way of adapting and restoring itself, which was I thought it was good. So the reason why I'm so interested in this is because a number of areas in my district, and I'm sure in other districts also, and one was the Yarmouth Bar. The Highway 304 from where we call the Churn Road, just north of that little snaky part that goes down to the higher level, is all prone for flooding and whatnot, and so it's good to see that the province is moving ahead with this, but the federal government also has a program that's called the Green Infrastructure Program. So I'm hoping that the province and the feds will get together and address some of these issues of the climate change. And I mentioned at the Yarmouth Bar and at the Churn area that I mentioned, and also we also have an erosion happening on the Lobster Pound Road down at John Cove Beach, sort of thing, in that Lobster Pound Road there. So there's lots of opportunities in there for, I believe, for the province and the feds to get together and provide some funding to help mitigate some of these erosion areas. But also, I don't want to leave out the good work that the DFO done for us at the Goose Flats, which is up in Pembroke, which allowed the migration of kayaking eels from the ocean up into the Goose Flats and up into Island Pond and back again. And at that time, I had spoke with DFO that perhaps we could meet with the engineers for DFO and come up with some type of a permanent solution for that area to make it to keep it like it is, instead of every 8 to 10 years trying to go to dig it all out again. So, and again, that would fit into that erosion concept again, because at one time, years and years and years ago, there used to be a wharf and proper sluice that protected that. So I was very excited to see this and then hear about what the province had come up with yesterday. So I'm looking forward to that, but I just want to let council know that that's out there now, and also I'm certainly going to be pushing. We were fortunate enough to get one announcement of some provincial money being spent on the causeway, and although it is $1 million, $1 million don't go far when you start working around with them causeway, replacing the bridge and whatnot. So, and some people think it's going to be the whole causeway is going to be replaced. Well, it's not going to be the whole causeway. It's going to be the seawall is going to be repaired, and the grate that goes over top of it is in bad repair, in bad need of repair, which they will also replace that. But from that point on, we don't know how far that much more that $1 million would go. But I'm thinking out loud that the province is already talking to the feds about this other possible funding. So let's keep our fingers crossed and see if we can work with that. But I will certainly be following up on it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. No, but all right. 7.5, late grant request from CFest. You have that in your package. What is the wishes of the board or council? Sorry. Go ahead.
Just for information, Mr. Chairman, to council, we did not receive a request from this organization last fiscal year. In the prior fiscal year, your award was $5,000.
Everybody's silent. When I first looked at this, go ahead, Councillor. Go ahead, Councillor Durkee.
I understand how important the CFest is to our community. There's no question. But it concerns me that this has been left at the last minute, considering that CFest starts in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I know being on the car show committee, we have to plan this well in advance. Yeah. And I'm sorry, no disrespect intended, but I don't feel that we should be addressing this at this meeting, and it should, if it's too late for this year, but we can certainly forward to the grant committee for next year.
Deputy Warden?
I was going to ask one of the all-time ridiculous questions about is this time sensitive, and Councillor Durkee had mentioned that CFest is starting in 2 weeks. I totally agree with what Councillor Durkee said in that regards. I'm kind of disappointed that I would have certainly looked favorable towards a grant towards CFest, because I know how many people from the municipality and all over Southwest Nova attend, but I'm really disappointed that they had to wait till the 2 weeks before the event, and it's just too short a notice. And as we all know, our budget's tight, and their asks that they're asking for would pretty well wipe out any contingency we have left over for local organizations and groups. So I would not be in favor of granting this request.
Councillor Cunningham?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it is late. What was there any, when the application came in, was there any rationale for the lateness? Maybe I'm missing something. Was it given? Are there extenuating circumstances that we could consider, or no?
There has been some transition on the leadership team there, but the policy of this district with respect to applying for grants has been consistent for a number of years. So there has been some transition, yes.
To clarify, no explicit reason for the late. Thank you.
So I guess I'm going to be honest with you, when I first looked at the request, and I'm going to state some figures here, and I kind of looked at it and said, if yes, previous amount was X number of dollars, and amount of this request, I looked at it quick, thought, why are they only asking for $1,000? Yeah, and then when I looked about the third time, woo, 10,000, last request was 5. I do have some concerns. A late request is quite an ask of the council after we've gone through and so on, when you're not on the original list, and we do due diligence with our list. We have X number of dollars, and we try to use it wisely. Well, if there isn't a request and we have a few extra dollars, we still put those dollars out. We do put a small amount, as the deputy warden said, in contingency and so on. Now, I know that at Seafest they're doing some, are they going to be doing fireworks? Because I noticed in here, it said fireworks for the Parade of Lights. So that's done, and I wasn't sure where we were or weren't and so on. So I guess at this time, I'm taking it from my fellow councillors that at this time you wish to deny the request and so on. Is that, I'm trying to get a handle on this. Go ahead, councillor.
Well, and again, it is unfortunate. But having said that, I did hear somebody else from around the table say it's important for the community. So, and I agree with that. It's a surprise that it came to us, and it is late. The ask was 10,000. I know the fireworks are really popular with everybody, and it's a big summertime festival. It is kind of core to what we do in Yarmouth, in my mind. So, I think everybody will understand that we may not be able to grant the full amount or near the full amount, but what I will do is I'll make a motion, and again, to grant $2,000 from our contingency for Seafest, and that's a much reduced amount. If the request came in on time, we may be able to do more at a future time. We've given $5,000 in the past, so there is some precedent for giving dollars. So I'll make that a motion. If there's a seconder, we'll put it on the floor and discuss. If not, then you know, I understand either way. But in my judgment, it's an important piece of what goes on in the summer in Yarmouth. We're kind of between a rock and a hard place in a sense. It's last minute, but I do understand volunteer organizations occasionally do have issues. So I'll put that out there as a much reduced offer on the request. But I think everybody will be understanding given that the context.
Yes. It's been moved by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Gerard LeBlanc. Okay, we're opening the floor for discussion. What is the wishes of council? Go ahead, Councillor Allen.
Okay, well, this came in late. I'm not quite understanding the fireworks for the Parade of Lights, because my understanding is that most of the boats that participate in the Parade of Lights provide their own fireworks if they want to have them on their boats. I know Yarmouth is putting on the July 1st fireworks this weekend, hopefully weather permitting. But as far as I know, most of the boats provide their own fireworks. My issue, I'm gonna be a pain here. We went into our contingency grant fund to give $250 outside of our community for an event. And this has taken place inside of our community, and it's a big event for Yarmouth and Yarmouth County. I didn't agree with going outside, with the money going outside, but I do believe we should be helping this in a small way. I'm more inclined around the $1,000 thing. I don't believe, I looked at their budget as well, $19,000 for 2 students to do Seafest. I'm probably not understanding where all that goes in, or where it goes, I guess. And the fireworks for the Parade of Lights, again, I'm pretty sure that if you put a boat in the Parade of Lights, if you decide you want fireworks, it's up to you to buy them. But maybe they donate, I'm not sure. But where this is in our community, it's a great event for our community. I would be inclined to want to go into our contingency for these guys, but I'm more inclined to go with like $1,000.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor LeBlanc?
Yeah, You know, this could be, we're kind of blaming the whole organization. This could be one person that was supposed to put the request and forgot or overlooked it or something. But I agree with Trevor Cunningham that and Councillor Allen that it's a community event, and I support Trevor on the 2,000.
I think Deputy Warden?
How can I put this politically correct? Number one, we're only 2 weeks away from the event. They've been planning this for a year. You can't tell me that funding was the last thing on their mind. Say, well, we got this request just for this. We probably got this request 2-3 weeks ago to go on our agenda. You can't say that they have not had funding on their mind. How are we going to pay for this stuff? It seems to me that this was an afterthought. If I was to go forward with the motion, which I'm not in favor of, I understand why it's on the floor, and I understand is that this is an event in Yarmouth. But my God, 2 weeks before the event, we don't know where. I would much rather see a presentation from the CFES committee to know where this money's going. Because in all reality, they mentioned fireworks, but Councillor Allen's absolutely right. I've been a part of some of those Parade of Lights boats, and yes, the fireworks were paid by the boat captains, or they got a sponsor from a local business to throw them off. I don't buy it. I'm sorry. I am going to be attending a lot of the events in CFES, but this is a little much too late, in my opinion, and therefore I will not be in support of this motion. I would much rather have a presentation by the CFES committee, but before I move forward with that.
Councillor Durkee? And then you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also have concerns about the budget and how it's allocated. Equipment and supplies, they're doing some general numbers, and I know from applying to the municipality in other areas that people have to provide a lot more information about the breakdown of the budget. $20,000 for entertainment. Yes, I know there's a lot of entertainment and it's wonderful and I appreciate that. But what is the entertainment and how much is each piece costing? So I'm unfortunately very disappointed in that this is so late and that there really isn't enough information here for me to support this request.
Go ahead, Sam.
Given the discussion, it's possible that the motion won't move forward, but should it move forward, my request would be to the mover and the seconder that we do add a proviso that if the support moves forward, that the letter clearly state that we are making an exception to our policy at this time and it will not happen again, that applications are to be received on time.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Cunningham.
I'm favorable to that amendment. I would also like to add a little bit more that not only would it need to be on time, but there need to be a presentation next year because of the lateness and so forth. So I think we should put that in the letter, and that will clarify, because I hear some councillors saying that they'd like a presentation. So I think that would clear everything up and make it easier for the motion to move forward, because I do agree we do, as a council, we do need to do our due diligence around letting folks know that, you know, we'll consider a smaller amount this time, but if we were going to grant the full amount, the process would need to be adhered to, and then also on top of that, probably because of the amount, we'd appreciate a presentation next year.
Okay. Councillor LeBlanc?
I'll go along with the
Amendment?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. If I may, on the fireworks, I have had the opportunity to, the municipality of Yarmouth, we've had a couple of boats in the Parade of Lights. And yes, at that time, the boat was provided to the municipality through Mr. Newell's operation and so on. And he gave each one of the boats $100 The captains usually put in money. I personally put in money to help with the fireworks, but Seafest gave out prize money for like the best decorated boat, etc. And there was prize money like $100. And I can remember when they came down and gave you the $100. Well, Bobby Newell put fuel in the boat, and Bobby Newell gave the boat, and the captain he gave of his time and so on. Sometimes the captain even helped decorate the boat. Then there was always the next day of undecorating and so on, and the captain was always there to help. So usually the prize money, I'll say the municipality of Yarmouth, and the town of Yarmouth and the municipality done it jointly, we just gave it to the captain to do whatever he wished. And I mean, it was the pay to help do that. But they also one time came around before we went out that night and gave $100 to each one of the boats to buy, because there was a fireworks company that was selling fireworks right there, so we went and bought some extra fireworks. It is a good show. I believe the reasoning that they may have been late is I believe Seafest is having a difficult time finding people to step up to the plate. And it's a lot of work and so on, and as we said, you wonder what happens in a 2-week period and so on for entertainment and so on. The classic car show runs within that time frame, but they don't use Seafest people, do they? No, it's all done. I don't know what support they do. I know they did like the mackerel toss, the young people that they hire, all their other things that I'm not part of the committee, so I don't know. So I know it's a difficult thing for them to do and so on. And funding on sometimes people that have never done things before, that's kind of on the back of their burner, like it's not there, and it should be one of the front runners and so on. So amending your motion, I think, was the proper thing, Councillor Cunningham, but I just want to that was my feelings and so on. Go ahead, Deputy Warden, and
Well, we see lots of advertisement. The car show, believe it or not, is not affiliated with Seafest.
No.
So
No.
I don't know. They have two employees there by the looks of that budget, and
Yeah.
come on,
Yeah.
2 students.
Yeah. Well,
I
they
really
advance.
caution council on moving forward with this request, because this is giving money at a whim, and I'm going to use the potato chip analogy. You do this for one, you're going to have to do it for all of them. I'm warning you from the way that I see it, that this is not something that we should be setting a precedent with.
Okay. So any further discussion? Okay. Question being called. Before I call them, can we have the motion read back, but it will be stated now with the amendment?
Moved by Councilor Cunningham and seconded by Councilor Tamara Long to approve $2,000 from grant contingency for CFES, and that a letter be forwarded indicating that an exception has been made for this time only, and further requests must be made within the deadline as indicated by only, and that a presentation must be made for any consideration for grant funding in 2019.
Go ahead, Councillor.
I'll also move for a recorded vote.
Okay, so we're staying at the $2,000? That was your motion? Okay. You ready? The question's been called. So it's $2,000 with the information and so on to come for. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, nay? Nay. On saying that, was there any requests of another motion of a lesser amount or anything, or you just want to let it go? Okay, saying that, we'll move on. Thank you very much. Flip it back and forth here. Oh, 7.6. Letter to municipal units from Municipality of Shelburne, Disaster Migration and Adaptation Fund. You had that in your package. what is the wish? I'm going to be honest with you. I may have to, I guess what I'm going to do is, well, okay. I'm going to hand it off to the CAO, but Councillor Cushion, you're on the mic. Go ahead.
This kind of ties in with, thank you, Mr. Warden. This kind of ties in with what I had discussed earlier about what the climate change adaptation and mitigation report. I certainly like to see us send a letter back to the mayor of town of Shelburne and go from there. Just explore exactly what possibly we can possibly get. So that's my thoughts, because it ties in right what I talked about. So.
Okay. Do you have anything to comment on to that?
So that's quite right, Councillor Cushing. This request, the request for action, is simply to indicate whether or not this council is open to dialogue with Southwest Nova Scotia units around this issue. There's no proposed project, there's no proposed funding, it's purely exploratory.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Cunningham.
Yes, I'll in accordance with the Councillor Cushing said, I think he is right. So what I'll do is I'll make a motion that we respond by agreeing to engage in a process of potentially finding a project and maybe funding something if there's something that's you know, of interest to the municipality district of Yarmouth and Southwest Nova Scotia.
Second that.
Been moved by Councillor Cunningham, been seconded by Councillor Cushion. I do have one comment that in the letter, if I may. The Government of Canada has recently launched a new disaster migration and adaptation fund to help reduce the impact of climate change and better protect Canadians against national disasters. That's fantastic. This 10-year national program will invest $2 billion in projects and will support large-scale infrastructure projects with a minimum cost of $20 million. So does that put us in the category at all?
Mr. Chairman, given the linear kilometers of coastline Nova Scotia has, I could certainly see a broad project creeping up to $20 million quite quickly. And, you know, 2 billion divided by 20 means 10, right?
Yeah.
10 projects.
Yeah. So, anyway, you heard, you ready for the question? Question being called. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Thank you. Who's move on here? 7.7, letter to municipal units from Municipality of Shelburne. Current health crisis. You have that in your project. I have been to a couple of their meetings. The last two I have not been able to attend because they fall on a morning when I'm not available to go. I know the town of Yarmouth, Phil Mooney has been going regularly to these meetings and so on. And I know what they are drafting and formulating a resolution to go forward to the fall UNSM or NSFM conference in Halifax. And they are also looking for a day in Halifax, whether it'll fall during the conference or not, or they call one earlier, to rally at the legislature and kind of voice their opinions to the provincial government per doctor recruitment and so on. So what is the wishes of council? Go ahead, your mic's on there, Trevor. Your mic is on, did you? Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead, Councillor.
Oh, thank you. Considering the fact that you just went to this meeting on doctor recruitment and understanding the fact that we have this group that seems to be working really hard to try and make improvements to our healthcare systems, I certainly would not be in favor of supporting any what's the word I'm looking for? Going to the provincial legislature. I think it's important that we support what the provincial government is doing at this point, and if we have specific concerns, then I think we should be writing a letter to address those concerns. But I think, I mean, my feeling is, personal feeling is that this is not going to end overnight, and that we need to give our group that just spoke at the recent meeting a little bit of time to put some changes in place. I think that came out right.
So is there any other further discussion? So what is, you wish not to support at this time? That would be your feeling? Okay. No, go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, yes, I mean, the ask in the letter is, it states, and I'll read the last, I guess it's both a sentence and a paragraph. If you are concerned about the deepening health crisis and would like to connect with the working group and join in the events we are organizing, please contact me at mayor@shelburne.town, anyway, please contact her via email. It's Karen Matatal, Town of Shelburne. So I mean, given that I agree generally, we do have a healthcare crisis in rural Nova Scotia. I mean, I can divulge some personal information. I don't have a family doctor, and so that's a problem. My children don't have a family doctor. We're having all. I mean, I had I guess a rub with the healthcare system over the last number of months, and it was, you know, there leaves something to be desired, I'd say. I mean, I know the folks out there in the profession are trying, the professionals in the profession, but clearly the whole thing's not responding to the need out there. I guess that's thus the letter. But it does simply ask that if we're interested in joining some of the events they're organizing. So I think we contact her and simply say, you know, we're interested on a case-by-case basis, depending on how this thing goes. I don't think we refuse it, but I think we engage in a dialogue, and we can you know, pick and choose what we participate in. I think that's wise. I don't think we should just say no point blank. I think we should say, yes, we're working at engaging in a dialogue with you, and doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to participate in everything or agree with everything that these folks have to say, but I think that having a healthy dialogue and maybe participating in some of the things they're doing makes sense. So I'll move that we write them a letter back, and see the CAOs listening, crafting a letter to reflect what I've kind of said. Thank you.
Councillor Durkee?
I would agree with that. I have no problem having a member with the working group and finding out what they are thinking and direction they're going in. And again, as Councillor Cunningham said, we can pick and choose which activities we want to be involved with.
What they're trying to do, when I said about meeting in legislature, what they want to do, I believe, is show the provincial government that there is unity among the municipal units, that even though we know they're looking for doctors and so on, that the municipal units are in agreement with each other that there is a need for this, because of doctor shortage, because of closures at the hospital. I was sending you all of the closure times of Shelburne and so on, and I stopped sending that to you. But it is an ongoing, regular basis now, and what surprises me now is Digby. Digby is closing their ER on a regular basis, and that's becoming upsetting to Digby. And so on. And I think what they're trying to do is to formulate like I say, a resolution, because if it passes at the fall conference, and it is because they're only accepting a limited amount of resolutions, and a resolution now has to be supported by a minimum of 3 and up to 5 municipal units. It just can't be one municipal unit. There isn't enough buses in my area. It has to be a minimum of 3, up to 5 units. And so their thought is, once it's on the docket of NSFM, then that is something that they will really push hard onto the provincial government, that there is a doctor shortage. And I know they're trying, and they just got to be a little better at it. And I know, I don't think our CAO is overly pleased with my presentation at the doctor's recruitment, or the physician's recruitment and so on, but that was the way I felt when I made my presentation and so on. And I never got no response. I think I was the only one that they didn't respond to, but it was there was a lot of good discussion, a lot of good presentations and so on, but I just had my feelings. So I think it's that we should support this in some way, and I think possibly Councillor Cunningham has the right idea. But Councillor Durkee, go ahead.
2 things. One, I don't know if anybody's noticed lately, but there was an announcement by the provincial government that there are some major changes coming to CBRM. And so I'm hoping that they're reviewing this and something will be happening here soon, like hopefully that our cancer clinic will go through. I know we talk a lot about doctor shortages, and we all suffer from that. I understand that. One of the things that a personal experience of mine is the long-term care spaces. And if you're not involved in it, you won't feel it, but I can tell you that the experience that we're going through looking for a place for my mother is extremely difficult. And we are definitely lacking in long-term care beds and assisted living funded by the provincial government. So there are a number of issues, and I really hope that some of these I know they're being discussed.
Yeah.
The question is, are they going to come up with solutions soon?
Go ahead, Councillor.
It's my second time speaking to this, but I just wanted to add in that we are a region. Yarmouth is very much central in the Southwest Nova region, and certainly healthcare is a big consideration for people choosing to locate. I'll say not only in the municipality district of Yarmouth or town of Yarmouth, but in the region. And we all know that lots of folks from Digby toward Yarmouth and from Shelburne toward Yarmouth use a lot of our services in the town and municipality of Yarmouth. So it's really, really important that we have good service throughout the region. So I think it behooves us to be informed about all of these issues, healthcare in Southwest Nova Scotia. And we've got the regional health center here as well. So I think there's lots to be gained from keeping our eyes open, learning lots, and I think that will better inform our decisions moving forward. So, yeah.
Do you have anything to add, or? Okay. Okay, we'll move forward from there then. Was there? Okay, moved by Councillor Cunningham. Who seconded? Oh, it's been seconded. You understood what the motion was? Yes, that's that.
You want me to read the motion back? It was moved by Trevor Cunningham and seconded by Councillor Patty Durkee to write a letter back saying what I just said.
I wasn't sure. Go ahead.
I'll clarify that. So, by what I said, I'll distill it down to a sentence. So that we would engage with the municipality of the District of Yarmouth, and municipality of the town of Shelburne, and other municipal units in southwestern Nova Scotia to further explore opportunities to provide to play a role in the providing of healthcare in southwest Nova Scotia, for instance.
Okay.
Providing our input.
I guess not, because the first one was, there was a motion as well.
Okay.
Are you ready for the question? Question being called. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Thank you. 7.8, project management. Councillor Cushion, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. First of all, I want to just let council know that I really appreciate the municipality staff and what they do. They have very challenging projects that are thrown at them, maybe not, or presented to them, I guess, be the proper word to say, and for them to work on and try to solve. In saying that, I'll go back to us as councillors, or us as a council as a whole. Perhaps when when a project comes up, or some type of request is being made from the public, that the public feels that they're not getting a quick enough response, and perhaps we as a council are pushing, instead of prioritizing different projects, different responses and whatnot, maybe perhaps staff is getting a little confused on how they should address some of this stuff. So I would like to see us, and I'm not quite sure if I'm going to say this right or not, but to develop some type of policy where our staff will get back to the public on different issues, no matter what they may be, and also staff be directed, have a policy on some direction on when we're buying, just use an example of some equipment, that we need to get it up and running as soon as possible. So in saying that, I also like to see us as council know how to request that we have certain things done. And I'll just use the double radar for example. Daniel, Councillor Allen and I, we discussed that in July that we'll be getting together to try to get some stakeholders together, and then I also mentioned that probably by September we would have some type of report to give back. So that's kind of like a timeline management thing to do, and I'd like to see us as council do something like that, and also staff to get that. And I believe our CAO would certainly encourage that to happen. That I'm hoping anyway. So I don't know if I explained myself good enough or not, but I just like to see us be a little bit more efficient in getting back to the public on things, and also getting back to some projects that we're working on. And I'm not saying that, you know, let's say in 30 days time we need an answer. Well, in 30 days time we need to have an update on where we are, so that we can make sure that whatever's happening can be done in a timely fashion. So does that make any sense, or am I going about it wrong, or what? So
Do you wish to speak first? Go ahead, Deputy.
I sort of get the gist on where Councillor Cushing's coming from. I think that this is a much broader discussion point that we should be having possibly in the committee of the whole, because if we were to make a motion tonight, I would be sort of unsure, and I'd probably shoot it down because I didn't really know what we're voting on, and I'm not understanding if you're suggesting this should be a policy, or what exactly this could morph into, because I do understand the response to public questions or on any other projects that you may have, but maybe this is a discussion that we should be having in the committee of the whole rather than in a council meeting, in my opinion.
Thank you. Go ahead, CO.
Thank you, Councillor Cushing, for indicating a desire amongst council to provide clear direction to your CAO, who is the only employee of council. When motions are made and projects are approved by council, those deadlines, those timelines really allow the CAO in any municipality to successfully execute the implementation of a project. Whether or not this council has the authority to set policy for any employee of the municipality other than the CAO to report back, we would have to look into that, because under the CAO system, this group can only give direction to one individual, and it's the CAO.
Go ahead, Councillor.
okay, I guess you know, when I was referring to our staff, of course I understand that the CAO is who we direct to to direct our staff to do things. I wasn't looking for making any type of motion tonight. I'm just opening it up for some discussion for our CAO in council to come up with some type of plans or anything. So that's all I was doing. So, but
Was there any further, Councillor Cunningham, go
Yeah,
ahead.
just a comment. It's good conversation, and I think it's something over time with our new CAO we can discuss. I mean, I've seen some governance models where council makes, you know, decisions through motion, and then the CAO follows up with, you know, a monthly report on where all of those decisions are in terms of their implementation. Maybe there's a timeline, maybe not, but were they immediately implemented? Were they not? So maybe that's something we can talk about moving forward. The CAO can put her mind perhaps to this issue and you know, maybe look at over a longer period of time what other municipalities are doing, what will work for us, you know, as municipal unit with the CAO. So I think that's something that's really good, because when somebody asks us, well, how do you know if staff's following through on the motions? Well, we're trusting. And I've always trusted the CAO, but it's a really good check to have something come back to say, listen, you made this motion, that motion, that motion. This one's been completed. This one's been completed, in the time and so forth. Who's responsible? Who's working on it? That's a way we can kind of track that progress, but it would be directly through the CAO. So that's just one possibility. I'm sort of talking 40,000 feet, but I'm sure our CAO can put her mind to that and come back with us over the ensuing months to discuss it again.
Councillor Durkee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that Councillor Cushing brought this up, because I think what we have to look at as a council is many, many, many months ago, we came up with a strategic plan which included projects and things that we wanted to move forward with. That strategic plan has never been addressed, and I think we are overdue to sit down with our CAO, review our strategic plan, and set our priorities from that. In addition, we had made a request, motion, which I welcome to our CAO, and I know she's overwhelmed at the moment, but to have a regular CAO report on a monthly basis, and that means that we get to see what projects are being worked on and where we are. So, and I know that's in time that's going to happen, but I think it comes from us to say, these are the things that we've decided we want to move on, and then we can see where we're going with those.
Okay.
Thank you.
Was there any further discussion on that? I did hear the discussion that, or from the Deputy Warden, that he thought this was something. Is this something you prefer to carry forward at a committee of the whole, or? So you're making that, are you going to make that would like to make that a recommendation that staff add this to the next committee of the whole meeting, or which would be, I don't think, July, August, September, would be in September?
yeah, okay. Well, I'd like to make that recommendation that we look into this sort of thing. I don't have
Have a
the
little
proper
further
wording or
discussion,
not,
yeah.
but for
further discussion in project
you know,
management.
as Councillor Deputy Warden had mentioned,
Okay.
right? So, but
Okay.
it had to be brought forward. So
Yes.
then that's what I'm
Okay.
doing, right? So,
Fine.
good.
Okay, thank you. 7.9, Planning Advisory Committee recommendations. 7.9.1, tiny homes. And before we get into too much discussion here, I want to make my apologies for last evening not being able to be at PAC. And this was discussed. Would it have been last evening? Tiny homes? Yes, yeah. You see. Okay. You see, I have the paper.
This isn't the first one, Mr. Chairman. There's
Oh.
one before that.
Okay. That's what I'm on, 7.9. 7.9.1. 7.9.1.
There are recommendations in this
Yes,
one.
okay.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, but that's on the next part, the Shaw Thorburn Planning Report. I'm in tiny homes, that's what's on mine. On which one? Tiny homes?
No. 7.9, Mr. Chair, was the recommendation on the Shaw Thorburn Planning Report. That was the actual motion that was put forward, recommendation to council.
Okay, then I guess,
It's actually 7.9.2, that almost should have been there for 7.9.
okay, I apologize.
It's there twice, and that's where you're getting confused.
Okay, well, that's,
7.9.1.
okay, yeah, well, that's where I was going, but okay, we're going 7.9.2, Shaw Thorburn Planning. Go ahead, Councillor, or Deputy Warden, I apologize.
So we're going to 7.9.2.
Point two, yes.
Okay, Mr. Chair, thank you very much for that. As soon as my computer opens up the recommendation, I'll get to it. All right, last night in our Planning Advisory Committee meeting, there was a request to rezone an area from R rural development, RD, to rural commercial, RC, by Shelley Thorburn, and it was the recommendation of the Planning Advisory Committee to proceed to a public hearing for the application request rezoning the properties, PID number 901-61472 Rose Road, from rural development to rural commercial, to enable the development and operation of an equestrian facility. So
That
I
is the
make that a
rec-
motion.
We had a motion by the Deputy Warden. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Durkee. Was there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, are you ready for the question? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded, motion carried. Thank you very much. That one. Okay, so was there some discussion on tiny homes last evening?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I had requested that we move the tiny homes to regular council because we had a very quick PowerPoint presentation put on by Roger Devine. We had a PowerPoint presentation put on by the County of Annapolis. As you can see there,
Yes.
that there's a lot of questions in what a tiny home is, what the regulations for a tiny home is there any reduced regulations in regards to septic systems, land lot size, the electrical inspections and stuff like that. And there's still a lot of questions up in the air. I think what I forward here, or asked to have forward in regards to tiny homes, is the tiny homes readiness. There's lots of questions in that regard, and it was felt by Roger Devine and also some of his colleagues that the province should take the lead on this to come up with some type of what a tiny home is or is not. One thing that a lot of people think that a tiny home has wheels, that's not true. A tiny home on wheels is basically a travel trailer. As you remember, tiny homes years ago might have been called mini homes. Back then, there was a CSA standard for mini homes, and where you'd find the CSA standard stickers was usually underneath the sink. Whereas tiny homes at this time does not have any regulations in that regard. There was some talk about that, and Mr. Chair, I believe it was you that received the original letter requesting that we look into changing some of our policies and or bylaws in regards to tiny homes. As per Roger Devine, we do currently have provisions that would possibly allow something like that. One of the things that was brought up last night was Bearland condominiums. That's where a whole bunch of different homes could share a well, water source, and or septic. But that, of course, would be done under development agreement. So therefore, we could, in theory, do a tiny home Bearland condominium. The problem with the tiny home is the provincial government does not currently have regulations in that regard. And I think it would be important that council as a whole receive a presentation from our development officer, Roger Devine, on his concerns in regards to tiny homes and possibly a way forward to possibly talk to or send a motion through the NSFM, or whether it be done through another avenue to try to push the provincial government to move on putting forward some regulations that the development officers could follow. Because the tiny home is a movement right now in certainly larger urban centers, but I can see it coming and moving towards smaller rural units like ourselves. There was also, what is a tiny home? It's most generally accepted to most people that a tiny home is a residential dwelling structure under not 500 square feet or 46 square meters. Currently in the municipality of Yarmouth, there are a few of those homes that small that do currently fall under that, under 500 square feet. One that I can currently think of is one up on the Broad Road that's not a seasonal structure. It's a full-time residence that they use, and they currently had to follow the current building codes for a larger house to have this tiny home. And one of their complaints were, well, the reason why we're building a tiny home is to cut back on costs. But as per our building laws right now, we have to follow the current building homes, whether it's a small home or a 5,000 square foot mansion. But I think it would be prudent for council to invite Roger Devine just to discuss this one subject on a possible go forward plan. Because right now Roger has no real guidelines on what a tiny home is, and maybe through council or through his recommendations, council could urge the provincial government to move forward on some type of building code or CSL approval. I'm not sure what that is, but Roger would certainly have a lot more input on that and what he would need. Therefore, council could recommend to the provincial government. There was a lot of discussion on it, but
Go ahead.
I think that's a great idea. The document that was brought forward to the Planning Advisory Committee was written by two authors from one municipal unit. It was not a document that was endorsed by the Building Officials Association. So there's a lot of technical information that this council needs to understand about that should the initiative move forward. The recommendations that were in that document reached further than municipal legislation. There were recommendations in there relating to provincial legislation. And for the entire council to be aware of the depth and breadth of that dialogue would be very important.
Okay. So we're good with that? We're good with that then?
yep, we're good with
Okay.
that. I'm also leave my microphone on because
Yes,
actually
7.9, yeah, 7.9.3, municipal planning strategy recommendations. You have that in your package. Go ahead, Deputy Warden.
Right, Mr. Chair, I'm opening up. Last night at the Planning Advisory Committee meeting, there was discussing on the to remove a requirement of notifying 50 property owners from policy 15.1.7.4 and policy 15.1.9.3 in the municipal planning strategy, and to include provisions for multimedia advertising. Therefore, I'm going to make the motion, even though I voted against it, that council move forward to remove the requirement to notify 50 property owners from policies 15-1-7-4 and 15-1-9-3 in the municipal planning strategy to include provisions from multimedia advertising.
Okay.
Therefore, I make that motion, because that was brought forward by,
That's a recommendation from PAC.
that's a recommendation from
From
PAC.
PAC. So we have a mover. Do we have a seconder for discussion?
Mr.
Yes. Okay. So it's been moved by Deputy Warden, been seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. We're open for discussion. Go ahead, Councillor Durkee.
Oh, okay, thank you. This was brought forth by Brad Fulton. The issue basically is that he is getting, every time there's a land use bylaw change and we need 50 people, a letter to go out to 50 people, there are people who say, why are you sending me this letter? He said, every time this happens. So the discussion was, is it necessary to actually have a specific number of people that the letter needs to go to? So he had suggested that we look at not necessarily the number of people, but the area, the distance away from any development, as to how we let people know that there is a public meeting going to be held. So it's not a matter of getting rid of notifying people. I think that's still, we felt was still really important. It was just that number 50, because in a rural environment, it takes a lot, sometimes with large tracts of land, 50 people could stretch it kilometers and kilometers away in order to reach people. So the discussion was, can we do away with the 50 and look more at the size of the area of how we address people, and then to use other ways to notify the general public that this public meeting is going to be held to look at the change in land use.
Councillor Trevor Cunningham.
So what I can say is I think what I'd request is that the motion be withdrawn, because I don't really feel qualified or not qualified. I don't feel prepared to vote on the motion tonight, simply because there's not a report attached to it with a clear rationale as to the, and thank you, Councillor Durkee, for speaking to the point. But having said that, I think in order to do my due diligence as a councillor, I'd need a report, you know, with the strengths and weaknesses and why and exactly. So none of that's here. There's just a recommendation from PAC. So I mean, for me to vote yay or nay on this at this point, I don't feel there's enough information in the package for me to vote one way or another. So I'd ask that this the motion be withdrawn, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the motion as there is it set, but certainly we need some background about the rationale for it, a more concise rationale for it, and then a clear articulation of what it's going to look like in the future. Because if somebody asked me why I voted one way or another on this tonight, I wouldn't be able to tell them, and that's my job as a councillor, to be able to tell the public how I voted, why I voted, how I voted. So I just ask that we table this for the next council meeting until staff can prepare a document to better inform council as to why they're recommending, well, the PAC why they're recommending this is a way forward.
Councillor LeBlanc.
Yes, I'm glad Trevor recommended that. But in saying that, I was in my first term 3 months, and we were going to pass a bylaw, a recommendation for the eel farm in Chabot, I think. I don't know how many people there were there at the Arcadia School, but there must have been 100 at least. And they came from quite an area. I don't know what the area is that you're talking about, but anyways, it was an eye-opening for me, I'll tell you, at that point. There was a lot of people against that. It went on for quite a while. I think the warden was there at that time.
Yes.
And it was quite a heated discussion, you know. And rightly so, the public has the right to have these meetings. If they don't know about it, they're not going to show up. How many of these requests to send out letters do we have on an average a year? So,
We haven't had one for a year.
we haven't had one for a year. I don't see the problem of keeping it the way it is. Thank you.
Deputy Warden, I think? Yes.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I was not in favor of this motion. I don't know. This request was an add-on addition to the planning advisory agenda on request of our planner, who will be retiring in September, as we all remember. It was his thought that he thought that it was cumbersome because the way that you put out the notification process is, and I was very involved on crafting this in our municipal planning strategy way back when. The concern originally was we never know what's going on in the municipality of Yarmouth. We're never notified that there's any bylaw changes, any new development agreements, anything like that was coming forward, especially to people out in the rural municipality. There only, at the time, was just the distance requirement, which was, I can't remember the exact distance at that time, I think it was only 250 meters. Now that would work fine out here in Hebron. But if you move out in, say, Kempt, Brazil Lake, Lake Vaughan, Carlton, that 305 meters would only encompass, if it was next to my land, would be me and my two neighbors. But living out in countryside like that, people want to know what sort of development is going in your area, and that development could include aquaculture, industries that are not what people would call suited to their area, whether it was a cement plant, a quarry, someone running large equipment all night. That would, where it's quiet out in that area, people want to know what's going on in their area. Yes, on this current equestrian request that we're going to be moving forward to a public hearing, there may be a lot of people say, well, that's not going to affect me. But there may be that one person down the road that say, yeah, it will affect me. I'm glad you told me. They had originally come from Brad had mentioned in there that sometimes when you're out in the rural area, the 305 meters or 50 resident owners, sometimes when you have to notify 50 residents of where the development is going to be changed, sometimes you have to go 2-3 kilometers out, which is true. But back in the day, there was some issues that we had that people really complained that we were never notified. This was one way that I found that alleviated a lot of the concerns. Not everyone reads a newspaper. Not everyone has internet. There was some discussion also last night about posting it in different media forms, whether it be on Facebook. The Clare Shopper would be a good one, but if you used anything to do with the internet, whether it be our website, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, a lot of people out my way don't have internet, so that would be no good to them. I think that we should leave it status quo. I think we should personally vote down this motion until we hear from the public stating that they want to see something changed. And it probably will be changed in another 5-6 years when we have to go back over our municipal planning strategy and land use bylaws. That's the time to change it. This, what Brad would call a housekeeping item, I think it's a little bit more than that. If council did decide to move forward with this change, we would have to have a public hearing. And of course, everyone is out in the countryside is going to know this. And there was a lot of people, and I'm not just talking about 5 or 6 people that pushed for this. There was literally hundreds that pushed for this. I don't agree with changing this now. It would only come from one staff person. If it come from the public, then I would consider it. No offense to our municipal staff, but sometimes staff, in my opinion, does not have the best judgment because we as elected officials have to answer to the public. It might be more convenient to strike that down for staff, a little less time consuming, but at the end of the day, the public wanted this. That's what the public got. There may be some out there that don't like it, but that's what they asked for, that's what they got, and that's what they're happy with. So my suggestion would be to vote against this motion and let it rest.
Councillor Cushion.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Again, we discussed this last night at the PAC meeting, and as my understanding, us as councillors, we take advice from staff on how to make things happen more efficiently. Well, so that was my understanding, that what we were doing in the aggravation that staff had to go through to get some of this stuff done. But in saying that, I do agree with what Councilor Trevor Cunningham was talking about. We need more of a detailed report on such a recommendation instead of trying to vote on this tonight. But then again, listening to Councillor LeBlanc and Deputy Warden Cunningham, things that happened way before my time, certainly has brought things to light that perhaps, and I like Deputy Warden Cunningham's suggestion that when we do a review of our PAC, is that right, what you're saying? Okay, that at that time we should look at it then. So I have to agree with Councillor Deputy Warden Cunningham that perhaps we should not go ahead with this right at this present day time.
Who's next on the list here? I think Councillor Trevor Cunningham.
Right, and just I guess maybe to add to the argument I'm making to withdraw the motion, what I will say is the last bit of the last sentence, I guess there's one sentence, it says, and to include provisions for multimedia advertising. So I don't know what that means exactly. It's very, very vague. And so because of that, and because there's not a lot of background conversation, I wasn't privy to all the conversation that went on last night. I again couldn't really vote one way or another on it. If the motion stands as it is, I'd have to vote against it just because, not because there's not some validity in the argument, because staff feels, but I don't understand again what it replaces. So if we were to adopt this even a year or two or three henceforth, I think it would leave us and staff in an awkward position if we voted against this tonight or for this. Well, certainly for this tonight. I can't vote for it for the reasons I've outlined. But my recommendation as a councillor would be to have the mover and seconder simply withdraw the motion, and we'll let the PAC know the rationale for withdrawing the motion, and we can move forward later on. So I don't know if this will be a bad idea in the future or not. But certainly, as is outlined here, I can't support it due to lack of information.
You can only table it, otherwise you still have to vote on it because it's a recommendation from the committee. You have to either table it for further discussion. So,
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
So I think the process, the order that we might want to consider here is that because there's a recommendation from the Planning Advisory Committee, if the mover and the seconder wish to withdraw their motion, that a motion that could be considered would be to table the recommendation till a full report can be provided along with it.
if I may interject, there's two more that wish to speak. The recommendation has to come forward from the PAC. I don't think you can withdraw it because PAC, the members of the PAC committee made a motion, passed, and the chairman is to make that motion before us. You've been designated, you have to make the motion. And then it's either for council to either accept it or deny it, or if you wish to table it for further discussion. I don't think you can withdraw it because then it's still on the books of the PAC that motion come forward, and if you don't bring it forward, then you haven't done the requirements of PAC.
Well, Mr. Chair, I don't have the microphone, but it was my understanding as per Robert's rules, it is a recommendation, it is my I have to, if it's there, bring it forward.
Yes.
Therefore, I don't feel that I can remove the.
No, you can't.
We have to vote on this motion, and I do not want it. I don't believe I can table it either.
Then you're still, the motion would still be coming forward for further discussion because the councilors, which have the final decision, need more information, so it can be tabled for that information. Then it can be dealt with at a future meeting, or if you don't wish to table it, it comes forward and it's voted on, and so on. Okay. We have Councillor Durkee and Councillor Gerard and Earl LeBlanc. So Councillor Durkee, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the concerns that I have is the fact that it designates a specific number of people. And so do letters only go, and you can maybe answer this question, do letters only go out and stop at 50? What if there are 100 people in that area that need to be notified? So once it hits 50, is that it? You know, so it's in a small area, that means that there could be a number of people who aren't getting that notification of public hearing because in the bylaw it says 50. So that's why the concern may be, do we look in terms of area and bigger areas, not necessarily 1,000 feet, whatever, I'm sorry, I don't recall the exact distance, but looking at, you know, if something is happening in Carleton, for example, do all the members, all the people who live in Carleton, should they be getting that letter as opposed to quote unquote 50 people? So I would certainly be in favor of tabling the motion to collect more information, and maybe staff can look at what other areas do in terms of this policy.
Councillor LeBlanc.
I just want to say this. I just want to give you an example. The Yarmouth dump is on the Hard Scratch Road. You come on a hot day to my house, I live about 6 kilometers from there. You can smell it. You know, and this is what could happen. I just wanted to mention that.
Councillor Deputy Warden.
Mr. Chair, as the municipal planning strategy and bylaw thing had stated, it was 305 meters, and it had to include 50 people. If it didn't include 50 people, then it went farther out, and it had to keep expanding the distance, especially that worked out in the rural areas, and that's where that come from. As far as tabling the motion, me personally, as a counselor, I worked very hard and went through a lot of blood and sweat and tears over doing this municipal planning strategy and land use bylaw that everybody could agree on. And this is something that was a very big bone of contention at the time, and it will be a bone of contention again if we let it hang. I think we should either say yay or nay tonight. If we let it hang, it's going to make people upset because it's going to be televised, and people have already, I mentioned this morning that I was kind of upset about it, said it to one person. It got out, and it's not that it quote unquote got out, because the PAC is an open public meeting, and I could have said anything, but it bothered me to no end on changing this because of how hard we worked. Down the road, we will be changing this because we will have to, as per provincial MGA rules, we do have to look at our municipal planning strategy and land use bylaws roughly every 10 years. Well, we've been 5 years into this roughly. So we will have to change it or at least look at it again. I do agree on a technical note that yes, it is very cumbersome for staff to manage, but at the time when we decided, or the PAC and council decided on this, that was the best option for people out in the country who don't get newspaper delivery or have internet or even have any means of finding out. So a registered letter was the way that we decided at the time that if there was any adjoining property owners, that at least out in the county, they'd be notified.
Councillor Cunningham, and that's it?
Yeah, I'm hearing everybody, and procedurally, I guess I'm just reading this. It was moved by Patty Durkee and seconded by Lauren Cushing to recommend to council to remove the requirement. So to recommend to council doesn't say at which meeting. So I think procedurally, we could withdraw it, and John could honor his duty and take it to the next council meeting, in a sense, which is almost the same as tabling. But having said that, to speak to Patty's point about the 50 properties, we wouldn't have to put it out to any more than 50 properties, because we thought that was, at the time, my recollection was, that was reasonable. If you put the letter out to 50 people, everybody's gonna know about it, right? That's the fail-safe. The counter-argument from staff is saying 50 is a lot of people to notify and a lot of work. Having said that, I think it happens infrequently. I'm gonna agree with, after deliberation, I'm gonna agree with our deputy warden. Let's put it on the table. I don't think it may be a small inconvenience to staff, but at the end of the day, let's put this thing to rest for now and not, I'd like to have more information, but I'm comfortable in, because it's a small issue, relatively small issue, and I think people want to know what's going on in their community. So for those reasons, I'll withdraw my request to withdraw the motion, and let's vote on it, in my opinion.
Okay. I have the last word. When PAC and when council discussed this way back in the day, and it was a long time ago, and the discussion came up, and we done a lot of due diligence work and so on it. And when we came up with why didn't we come up with 49, or why didn't we come up with 55? 50 people, that basically gave 25 on each side of a rezoning requirement. And I believe this originally came up for major discussion over on the Churn Road when there was a lobster pound wanting to be built in there. That was a rezoning of a piece of property. And well, how far do you go? And that's where we came up after discussion and so on, 50 people. And you go out 50 people going back towards the Overton Church, or 25 people that way. You go 25 going down towards John's Cove. That covered a big distance, and it covered all those people. Now, when you go out into a rural area and there's a rezoning, and you go with 50 people, and as Councillor or Deputy Warden stated, you have a long distance between, like you said, the distance right handy if he wanted to rezone, there's only 2 or 3 people. But if you go out to the 50 people, those other 30 going this way or going that way, they don't care what John Cunningham does on his property for rezoning, because they're 2 miles away, and they're 2 miles away on this side. So council had done a lot of work on the 50 people. We just didn't sit down and just throw a number out there. We'd done a lot of discussion and so on, trying to come up with what would cover a nice area. The cost to doing 50 people, I don't know what an envelope costs. I don't know what a stamp is. I'll say $2. So you got $100 plus your envelope. You have a computer in there that generates the letters and so on and so on. My recommendation would be, I would never have voted for this last evening if I'd had the opportunity to be here. Am I going to vote for it this evening? No. I believe it should stand the way it is in our PAC, that the 50 people, and leave it at that. It works. Is it a little costly? Yes, big deal. On a $12 million budget, it's piddling what we have to do. And in the last year, we haven't done any. I wish I had 400 to do a year, because that means we're moving forward. We only get the odd development rezoning. I say leave it the way it is. You've brought the motion forward. It should either be voted on here, or you table it for further discussion if PAC wishes to have that further discussion, which would be at the PAC level. That's my recommendation. So do you wish to go forward with the question? Question being called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those contrary, nay. Nay. Motion defeated. Thank you very much. Wow. No, listen, you committed to coming, you gotta commit to stay.
Shortened our treatment meeting next week by about half an hour.
The next item up is reports. I don't know if anybody has any questions or concerns in any of the reports that we have there from, like, well, we just done planning advisory. Don't think there was anything in heritage, occupational emergency measures, executive committee. We haven't had a meeting. District planning, we haven't had a meeting as that was discussed here in an earlier motion. And so on. Was there anything further? If not, the only thing I'm sorry, Deputy Warden.
I don't remember hearing council make a discussion, but did I hear correctly that possibly that council would like to listen to Roger in regards to tiny homes and at a future committee of the whole meeting? Yeah, just for information. It doesn't have to be next month, but our next available time.
Okay, so that, it doesn't need to be a motion, just
No,
a
it doesn't.
recommendation to council.
Just a recommendation.
Yes.
Because
so.
there's a lot in there in that regards,
Yeah.
and I do believe
Yeah.
that in the future is going to come a little bit stronger
Well-
here in the municipality, and that may be something that would happen quicker actually in Councillor Cunningham's district here because of the cost of homes. And with septic and water, that might be a cost-effective way to, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but I think we should be discussed and hear Roger Devine's point of view on
Yep.
that.
Okay. Councillor Cushion, you have, go ahead, you're on.
Yes, I just want to speak with Friends of the Yarmouth Light. Councillor
sorry.
Durgree already had mentioned about the upcoming activities at the Yarmouth Light for Canada Day and whatnot, and I certainly appreciate the Friends of the Light, their committee, what the hard work they do to organize all this, all these activities. Number one, but number two, I'd just like to remind council that tomorrow night is the AGM for the Friends of the Light. It'll be held at the Winslow House. I've already let the Friends of the Light know that I won't be able to be there because I'm going to the graduation, which I had committed to prior to knowing that when the AGM was. So I just let the rest of the council know that the AGM for the Friends of the Light is tomorrow night down at Cape Pursuit at the Winslow House. 7 p.m. I think it is. 7 p.m. Yeah.
Councillor LeBlanc, you had your, yes.
Yeah, I just have a little report about the YASTA. We had the AGM meeting last week, and then we had the regular meeting. The VIC is ready and going good on the CAT. The tourist rooms for 2017 were up from the previous year, even though the engine on the CAT was slow and the trips were there as what it should have been. And the bookings this year are looking very good. There's a new marketing person that's going to replace Rick Allwright. That I'm not gonna say his name because he knows about it, but I guess he hasn't accepted the last word that I heard. But they think he's gonna. And Sunday there was 7 radio DJs from Portland that came and met with YASTA, and they went all around the Yarmouth and Yarmouth County and had food from all over the place. Then they came to Trout Point, and I was fortunate enough to entertain them. And another thing, Rick Allwright put his name forward as for a member for YASTA as a municipal representative. So I don't know. Did you get a request from him, Liz? No. Okay. It's but he's gonna put a request, which we need one from the municipality of Yarmouth. Okay.
Thank you. Was there? Councillor Durkee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say that I attended the Western Counties Regional Library Annual General Meeting and Board Meeting, and there was one other. There were 3 of them all together. And just to let everybody know that Yarmouth will be hosting the annual conference this year in September, and it's called Be Bold, and they've got a great lineup of people who will be speaking, and kudos to the organizers of that committee who have put that together. There are a number of initiatives for the Western Counties Regional Library. They have a great Facebook page where they let everybody know what's happening. Just to let you know, there is a difference between, like, the Yarmouth Library is part of Western Counties Regional Library. It's a member. So what we deal with is all the Southwest Nova libraries. And so we had some great discussion about thoughts for the future and where to go, and looking at how we can start to brighten up and make some of the libraries more inviting and more of a community, have more of a community aspect to bring people together, similar to, we discussed the Halifax Library and what has become of that brand new facility and the way they're moving, and how can we make it more inviting for people of all ages to gather. And so that's one of the things I think we'll be looking at in the future for all the libraries, where you can actually go and talk to people in the library, as opposed to having to be so quiet all the time. So yeah, it's really interesting.
No other reports anybody wants to give? Hearing none. We'll move on to item number 9, and I believe that's the Deputy Warden in-camera recommendations. You have that, Deputy Warden? Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to extend the cleanup on PID number 901-63353 for stage 1 ending July 1st, 2018. July 31st, 2018. Stage 2, August 31st, 2018. And stage 3, September 30th, 2018. Failure to comply with any one stage would terminate all extensions.
We have a mover. Do we have a seconder? Second. That Councillor LeBlanc? No, okay. I'm sorry. Moved by Deputy Warden, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. Was there any further discussion on the motion?
Question.
Question being called. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Contrary minded? Motion carried. Thank you. Was there any other business of council?
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.